And one of three amazing Cloudways Mavericks, and we are here today with the one and only. It's Diane Wallace and Dan Maby. I believe you were uncertain. Are you sure you're Dan?
I'm not sure. Maybe I am.
Okay, so
Maybe I'm not.
So actually, Dan, not maybe Dan. It's Dan. Actually, have you heard that one before? I felt like a dad joke. Yeah. I feel quite proud of that. It takes a leap to think about it, but it's kind of funny. Hence a dad joke. Folks, we are here. We're going to be talking about inclusivity, inclusion, and its impact on your well-being. This is really important. And we've got both Dan and Diane from Big Orange Heart. So thank you so much for joining us, guys. You've been, I think this is your fourth appearance with us.
It is, yes.
Brilliant. As we continue to discuss things like mental health, both in the remote and in the physical workplace. And that's what we're going to be covering over the next 40 to 50 minutes. If you have questions, please do connect with us on whatever social platform you are watching this on, because our Cloudways team are everywhere waiting for your questions, and they're going to ping those over to us here, and we can then put them on screen and ask them of our guests. What we're going to do is the normal kickoff. We're going to work our way around the room doing introductions for each and every person, and then Peacher is queued up with our first question as we open up the discussion. So I believe we should do that right this. Well, actually, let's do one more thing. There is a speed contest I've been told to promote just in my ear now. This is live and unedited. We need to make you aware that there is a WordPress speed standout challenge for you. Is your website super fast? You can check that out over on this amazingly easily rememberable URL, which is bit.ly/2 November Kilo 6 2 Echo Quebec. That's bit.ly/2 November Kilo 62 Echo lowercase Quebec. Sorry, Quebec. Go check that out, folks. If you are a speed nerd, if your website is super fast, you probably want to be a part of that contest. Right, let's start with Diane. Let us know a little bit about yourself.
Hello, I'm Diane, and I'm a freelance WordPress developer and designer, specializing in custom WordPress themes and plugins.
Awesome. Young Dan, actually.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be back here with the amazing Cloudways team. I'm Dan Maby from Big Orange Heart. We're a registered charity that supports and promotes positive wellbeing and mental health within the remote working communities.
Awesome. My name is Lee Jackson. I am the host of the agency Trailblazer podcast. Jan, over to you.
Yeah, I'm Jan Koch. I run the WP Agency Summit and the Ecom Services Summit, and I'm proud to be back here after my daughter has been born 3 weeks ago, and now I'm ready to rock and roll again.
And folks, I am expecting a boy, so I've already had conversations about the potential of a boyfriend-girlfriend in a relationship here.
It's all arranged.
Yeah. We're all arranged. And then finally, Peacher.
Perfect. I am Peacher Neri. I am a designer, and I talk about user experience all the time. And I'm also a Cloudways Maverick.
Hooray!
Hey!
Right, so we are so happy that this appointment with a Big Orange Heart has become kind of monthly. That's what we're trying to do. And every month we talk about something that feels urgent and important. It's always about mental health and how to be happy in your remote working, because I find that actually I live in Valencia in Spain, which is a city with a lot of digital nomads. Some of them are more established, others will leave in a short time, but so many of them actually struggle and they don't stop and think, but what we're doing is really difficult. Being a remote worker is not easy. It presents a whole series of challenges, and at the moment the issue of inclusivity is and inclusion and exclusion, which is its counter, is obviously, it has been, I feel, one of the consequences of COVID. I think that COVID, in a way, has brought to the fore many things that needed to happen. And I actually don't think it's a bad thing that contrast brings out issues that do need to be tackled. And I think that exclusion and the effects that exclusion can have on our mental well-being in general is hugely important. And so what I want to ask both of you is how, because I mean it's an issue that it's in society, and the term exclusion includes so many different categories that get excluded. So it really is such a huge thing. So how do you frame it? How do you frame exclusion, and why does it matter for the mental well-being of those who are excluded as well as those who are included? Because it affects everyone, I feel.
Yeah, that's a really good point. For lots of people, recently with lockdown happening, this might be the first time or the first time in a long time that people have been excluded from society and are, experiencing isolation. But for some people, this is for various reasons that their daily reality. For example, kind of if you're disabled, you're excluded physically from lots of places. People are excluded because of gender. People are excluded because of race. And I was talking to Dan about this and sort of saying that the big discrimination is horrible, but you have the tools to deal with that. But it's the daily diminishing, the dehumanizing aspect of continually being excluded that is really damaging to someone's mental well-being. Lots of people have just recently experienced what that's like, but we should always be mindful as well that for some people this is a daily reality. I know, Dan, you were saying that lots of people have been accessing Big Orange Heart. There's been a real uptick since lockdown.
Yeah, we've seen, unfortunately, a huge increase in people reaching out to us, and a huge, a recurring theme that we're seeing in the communications is around the, the fact that the individuals are isolated, they are excluded, they're not able to be part of society given this current situation. So this, as you've mentioned, this kind of first-hand experience of exclusion is, it's the very real world experience of millions of people right now. For some, it will be an eye-opener. The first, for many, it may be the first time they've really felt exclusion in some way. So it opens up the opportunity to have these kinds of conversations, and we need to have these discussions. We need to be talking openly about inclusiveness and inclusion to be able to, move forward. This is, as we were discussing earlier, Diane and I, around this. This isn't a kind of a you get to here and you're done. This is a continually evolving practice. We've got to continually be talking about inclusivity and the impact of exclusivity as well.
Do you think this environment as well has actually helped in some way for those who have felt excluded over the years because they maybe can't physically get into a building, or a building is not set up for them? And now we've proven that the entire world can actually work remotely. We can work from home, and businesses around the world are starting to embrace that idea that maybe if you are not mobile like someone else, you can still you have an absolute valid input to a business. You can absolutely contribute no matter what. And we've all proven globally we can do this from home. We're all at home right now. What are your thoughts there?
Definitely some of my friends who have physical disabilities and have physical barriers to accessing events, lots of them have actually found lockdown quite liberating. Lots of them have found that there's kind of, not only have they been able to access events online, everything's gone online, and that's been wonderful. So much things are happening online, but also that there's been a leveling of the playing field. There's this kind of feeling that for the first time we're all kind of experiencing the same society. We might not like it. Lots of us might kind of be going, well, this isn't as much fun, but at least it's kind of equal. And I'm not saying that everybody, I think that most of my friends are hoping that some of the lessons that we've learned around remote working, about having virtual events, and just being aware of how people are excluded sometimes. I think that they're just hoping that those will carry on over once lockdown's lifted.
Yeah. And I think it's also kind of tricky to find a balance here when we talk about exclusion, because there is this kind of, I would say, mindful exclusion where people willfully exclude others. And then there is a situation like Corona where we have to be excluded in some way or form because we just have to be divided from our team members. And that's one thing, as Peter said in the beginning, it's kind of tough to be a remote worker if you're not used to it. And that's one thing that many friends of mine told me, is how much they miss being in their teams. And I work from home for like 8 years now, so I embrace it, and I actually prefer it rather than being in an office and having to deal with office politics. I prefer just being the only person here in the room and being able to do what I want to do. But what are your thoughts on people being separated from the teams they want to work with and they love to work with?
Dan, did you want to?
So yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting time, this period. Obviously, we've gone through this kind of a unintentional social experiment, in terms of separating us around this, and it's there's been some really unexpected results around it. In some, going slightly back to a little bit what we were talking about just now, in some regards, you've had the opportunity to make things more accessible for some people, and enabling more people to partake in some things, because everything has been moved to well, not everything, sorry, but a lot of things have been moved onto a virtual environment. This kind of online events, for example, has really opened up the ability for many individuals that previously were unable to partake to now partake. So it's there's definitely two sides to this entire situation that we need to consider. And look at it from an inclusive and exclusive perspective to see how individuals can benefit and learn from this experience.
Yeah, that's actually a beautiful perspective. And one thing that comes to my mind is immediately, as we see so much more diversity with people who can attend events now and people who can work from home that hasn't been possible before, is why is diversity so important when we bring it into our events and workspace?
I think that we touched on this before, that you want diversity in your events and in your workplaces because, as Peter said earlier, it brings in different perspectives. Also, you might actually be excluding the best people for the job because you might have barriers in the way, whether it's unconscious bias or systemic barriers. So you might not be getting the best, but you also might find that someone brings a new way of thinking because people from different backgrounds might have a different way of solving a particular problem. So to have a wide range of people with a wide range of experiences is really beneficial.
I think it comes down to identifying our biases, doesn't it? It's a really important issue here, and it's not a bad thing to identify our biases. Whether we're organising events, whether we're hiring individuals, there are many reasons for us to, take a step back and look at ourselves and do we have unconscious bias? Do we have conscious bias? And can we work through that? And going through that process of recognising those is a really it's a real key step to take in enabling more people, enabling our events, our hires, our various reasons for to be communicating with individuals to be more inclusive.
I'm actually glad you raised that, because for me, my experience with employing people, I recognize when I look at the past that I have had unconscious biases, as simple as looking through CVs and seeing names and making assumptions about those people based on their names. And I hate that I actually did that once. It's a horrible feeling looking back and thinking, oh my word, I excluded people potentially. I mean, thankfully I called myself out at the time and I was like, no, have a look at the qualifications. Are these people going to, do they have the experience that I'm looking for? And let's interview them on that merit. But my initial gut feeling was to, oh no, let's not oh, this sounds good, and I really had to call myself out, and I felt horrible. I remember doing that, but it's not about my feelings necessarily. What it is about is very important for us to recognize that, unfortunately, we kind of have been conditioned over the years, haven't we, by either parents or by friends or by culture, etc., to have these biases. And when people say, oh, I don't have any biases, or you suggest that they might, they actually get really offended. But I'm going to say right now that I recognize that I do still have biases, and I have to fight them every single day. Do you guys have any tips to help us, either through recruiting processes or through, like we were just talking about with regards to events, etc.? Do you have any tips on helping us see where we might be unconsciously discriminating or unconsciously excluding somebody based on something that's going on inside?
There's a really good example that most major orchestras now do blind auditions. So they wanted to get more diverse backgrounds, but also more women specifically into orchestras, and they recognized that there was unconscious bias, and most major orchestras now do blind auditions, and the number of women in orchestras, I don't think it's quite 50%, but it's a huge increase since they've started doing this. And also, Dan, I think you can talk about what we do at WordCamps when we do speaker selections.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
For the events, we look at that blind speaker selection process is a really good way to take things forward. And it doesn't limit. You don't need to limit that to events. You can looking at CVs, if you need to review CVs. Removing identifiable information from the CVs, from the resumes, as you go through that that hire process. There are many ways to encourage more inclusivity when it comes to that kind of hire process. Looking at our gender neutral language is a strong one. When you're writing job descriptions, just be aware of the wording, the language that we're using. You may be looking at writing results-based jobs descriptions as opposed to kind of, here's a tick list of qualifications you need, because there were some studies around the difference between male and female individuals that would go through, and females will look to check off more of the qualifications than a male. So you're instantly excluding a large percentage of what may be very good candidates, because you've put this laundry list of this checklist up that you're asking the candidates to fulfill. And obviously, if you're going down the road of actually writing a more looking at alternative ways of putting that language together, you may find that you will open up the doors to a much wider candidate base.
I do have one question. Sorry, Picha. I do have one question in that context, and that's related to my hiring of a general VA just a couple of weeks ago. And that was biased too, but I was actively looking for a female VA to hire, because my bias was that women are more detail-oriented. And since that position was related to communications and to doing some thorough research and basically things I thought women would do a better job at than men, I was excluding many men from my applicants, to be honest. And I'm not sure if that was the best move, the smartest move, the most ethical move whatsoever. I just want to know, Dan and Diane, do you have any thoughts on whether men or women are better suited for certain positions than others, or should there be like this general approach of equality?
So that's quite interesting. That's a really interesting question. The first WordCamp I did, it just happened that the whole team were women. That just happened accidentally, and I found it a really very collaborative experience. It was very different to any projects that I've worked on, but then I don't know how much that is that they were women or who they were. And I think I definitely do think that, as we were saying, that having diversity in your team means that different people bring different skill sets. but I would be very wary of going so far as to saying, you know, kind of women have these skills and men have these skills. I'm not sure that you can say, you know, women are generally considered to be better communicators, but then there are some women that are terrible communicators and some men that are great communicators, and that's, you know, kind of that's the reality. I think, you know, sort of you can make generalizations, but I think that you have to, at the end of the day, recognize that people are individuals, and so, you know, you can't really say, you know, like I said, women are better communicators, because I know some terrible communicators that happen to be women and some men too.
I think that the point is that, generally speaking, we all generalize. I catch myself generalizing all the time, but generalization is the root of racism. Is, you know, which is the sort of elephant in the room, you know, sexism and racism. Generalization is at the root of it. And I have been furious for being typecast for things that were not true at all. But I am sure, I know for a fact that I have done it. I'm sure I have done it. Whatever the bias was, it could have been, I want to work with a woman, but that's a bias. Do you know what I mean? So, so whatever it was, I've definitely done it, but I know it's been done to me, and it's infuriating. And it's just, and so often it's wrong. You know, if you may choose someone, you know, a man over a woman, saying, well, I'm choosing a man because he's less likely to go and get pregnant. And then the next thing that he does is go and get pregnant, which is exactly what happened to me. And I was like, it's not going to happen to me. It's just, but I got, you know, anyway, so, and this can happen to lots of, I was looking at a study that they've done, an experiment that they've done in America, and sending out exactly the same CV with, like, sort of, you know, synonyms, but with black sounding names, and exactly the same name, but white sounding and black sounding names. And the results were astonishing. There wasn't a photo, there wasn't nothing, there wasn't anything that told you what race was that person, but just the name. And it was like 75% fewer candidates were selected if their name sounded black. And I'm sure that the people who did the selection maybe didn't even think that they actually had a bias. It's the unconscious bias that I find is the most dangerous one, because no one believes that they have. I believe that most people, literally, we all do our best. So I guess that making our practices and policies inclusive is really key. And I think that, Dan, you sort of already answered that by saying that you can do, you know, there's practices that you can adopt, such as blind CVs and so on. But what can we do? Because it's not just when you're hiring, it's general practices in general that we need to, and there are so many different portions of the population that you can exclude. It's disabled people, it's gender-based, it's race-based. There are so many different ways.
I think another one to consider when you're looking at candidate, you know, we're looking at hiring individuals. It's ban the use of rejecting potential candidates based on culture fit or gut feeling. You know, remove those, because again, you're just allowing your unconscious bias to come in there, whether well, it's unconscious. The clue is in the name there, but it's you're opening yourself up to excluding individuals by going down that route of, you know, of gut feeling or cultural fit of your company.
I mean, I think that recognizing the fact that, you know, we all have biases, even if we're trying to fight against them, which is why I do believe that, you know, for as long as possible, trying to look at somebody's work. Say, if you're hiring someone to be a developer, you know, maybe get them to do a code test before you ever meet them. Do as much of the hiring process before you let your biases come in, you know, so give them a chance to prove themselves before before any unconscious bias comes in, just like the orchestras get to play. If if you're hiring a developer, see what they can do and then meet them, once they get to that point, because by then they've proven themselves, and you're not making assumptions about their skills based on who they are, based on their race, gender, or disability, or any of those other things. So I think that to recognize that we all have biases is the first step.
How would you implement that hiring process? When I think about like the usual suspects of onlinejobs.ph, Upwork, and all those freelancers.com and all those other platforms, it's, I think, virtually impossible to give them a test task before seeing their profile and recognizing whether they're male, female, whatever. Would you put out a challenge for a developer on the website and just say, send us your results, send us the code you would use to solve this challenge, and then apply via that way?
I think that if you find that whatever system you're using for your hiring actually introduces all of the issues that you're trying to avoid, then yes, look at a new way of hiring. Put out on Twitter, go to our website, we're hiring, and then start your hiring process from there. If there's systemic failures in a system, say like Fiverr, then I would say, yes, don't use it. And then if enough people stop using it, then they will change the way that they deliver those services so that they are fairer, so that they do cut down on bias. We have to change what we can change to make everybody else change. If we don't change first, everything stays the same.
Yeah.
Regarding biases, just as I was saying earlier before we went live, there's just to give you an idea of how deep the biases can run without us realizing it. I've heard that the blind orchestra auditions, that women always take their shoes off before entering the audition room, because if the sound of heels may influence the selective the board. So it's incredible, and therefore, I mean, who would have thought of that? I just wouldn't. And and I think that there are so many out there that we just have all the time. And again, I feel kind of grateful in a way that this sort of major society shifts are happening. I mean, tragedies, of course, but they really forced all of us to look in the mirror and go, wait a minute, you have privilege. How are you using it? Because that's basically what happens. There's the holders of privilege that decide who to dish it out to. And that's where the biases come in, because basically you want people that look like you. And I think that a good way of changing that is having people that don't look so much like you around you. Again, it's not a choice criteria, but I feel like there's a really it's such a. Do you agree that it's difficult? Because it really is. Because you often hear regarding the gender inequality, which is a fact. I mean, it's a fact. There's stats and facts about it, and then you hear people saying, yeah, but I don't see gender, I just hire the best person for the job. And it's nearly inevitably always a white man. I mean, sorry white man in the room, but it's just what usually seems to happen, and because it just reflects whoever else is there. So what do you answer to something like that? What do you answer to, well, I just choose the best candidate for the job? I mean, Are you sure that you do?
I think that, as we were saying, I think the first step to as you said, recognize when you have privilege. We have privilege, we have a platform, so we need to be, rather than we don't need to be gatekeepers. Really, we need to be holding the door open. Two, we have to recognize that we have bias. It doesn't mean that we're terrible people. It just means that we're people that grew up in society. We're indoctrinated in society from a young age, and to believe that society hasn't affected us is ridiculous. So we have to recognize, first of all, that we have privilege, and we have to recognize that we have bias. If we can't recognize those two things and get all defensive if someone points this out to us, then we can't change anything. And we have to start from the beginning. We have to recognize where the issues are before we can change anything.
Absolutely.
Sorry, we do have something. I thought someone else was going to ask a question, but we do have something that came in here from Michelle. That we were live, folks. Michelle was sharing. She'd been told that many Indian WordPressers experience biases against including them in the events and also as podcast guests. How do you think we can be more inclusive? That's a big question, I know, but I've certainly seen that. And
I had 2 people from India on my WP agency summit. Just because I'm friends with them.
Processes, doesn't it? It comes down to our, how are we going through, that selection process, certainly for events, if we're talking about WordCamps, that selection process for speakers, isn't it? That going down the route of offering
the blind selection process. Yeah.
Blind selection. But also in the case of, specifically if we're talking about places like developers in India, there's probably other barriers as well. There's visa barriers. There may be higher costs involved. So, one thing that we have to do, at the moment it's virtual, but once we're back to live events, then, we need to do what we can to help people in practical ways with visa applications. And I know that traditionally WordCamps don't, don't pay speakers, but we need to maybe look into, sort of like, is there an argument for looking at travel costs if it means that we kind of have a more diverse speakers in our WordCamps? Maybe this is something that we have to talk about. Because sometimes, just having a blind selection process, that's brilliant. That's the first step. Like I said, you've always got to think that, this is the floor, where's the ceiling? So after we've said, okay, this is brilliant, we're getting all these applications from people, from all over the world, and this is a really diverse speaker selection. But this person can't attend because they can't get their visa, and this person can't attend because they just can't afford to get there. So then we have to offer more practical help. And when we wanted more women speakers at WordCamp London, we provided a creche because we suddenly realized that lots of people were, well, I'd love to speak, but 2 of us want to come to speak, and so one of us has to stay at home, and it usually was the female partner that chose to stay at home. So we said, well, then we need to do something practical. So we put a creche, and so not only did we have more women able to speak, but we also had more women coming to attend. And we actually, in the end, we actually had families, kind of like I would see, whole family units, parents with children. And so it's brilliant to have the blind selection process. That is brilliant, but that is the beginning. And then you have to say, what other barriers are there? What are the other barriers? And I'm not saying that we can solve them all at once, but we have to identify them, and we have to try and take those barriers down as we see them.
Yeah, particularly with WordCamp London, it's a long process, isn't it? I mean, we're talking several years of work to get to these points. We had 2019, I think we had 164, I think, speaker applications, and through the blind selection process, so the initial process that we do, which we strip all identifiable information, we had an exact 50-50 split between male-female speaker
fantastic,
which was just incredible. But that was off the back of several years of building up to that point with that specific event. That didn't happen overnight. It takes energy, it takes effort, and it takes these kinds of discussions. I think
the first. Oh, sorry, I was going to say, I think the first year we had the creche, we had one child, but we said it doesn't matter, we're going to do it. And then, I think that by the last event, Dan, I don't know if you can remember, but we had to get more. We actually had to get more child carers in because it was so oversubscribed. So first of all, you can make your event inclusive, but it takes a while as well for people to realize that it is inclusive, because if people are used to being excluded, they're not going to know it's going to take people a while to realize that actually, hey, you're included.
Yeah, it takes a while because also it's about representation. If you don't ever see anybody that looks like you, it is much harder to muster up the courage and step up and say, oh, I'll talk as well. Sorry, Jan, carry on.
Yeah, no worries. I was just going to ask, with those blind auditions, what happens if you, from those blind auditions, pick like 70% male speakers? Like, it's not on purpose, but you would be excluding women there.
Mm-hmm. And this is the thing. There is no perfect solution, and it's hard work. That's the thing. We need to not shy away from that hard work. We need to accept that actually, to ensure that we can try and be as diverse as possible, we need to continually keep evolving and continually keep adapting our processes. And if we're finding that actually, you may find there's a bigger issue. If you've got 70% male after a blind selection process, is there something before that step that's causing that? And it's working back from there. So there are many different reasons.
So do you mean even the application process itself may be off-putting or excluding people from applying, therefore you're getting a more male applicants rather than female?
Absolutely.
Well,
so it's actually going back and further back to work out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Try and find.
So we were talking earlier about was it WordCamp Brighton?
Brighton, I think it was.
The opportunity. Dan, you were talking about offer the opportunity to provide video versions of your talk submission as opposed to written, because some people are better at presenting their content in a video format than a written format. So just looking at where you might have a point of failure in whether it's your language, whether it's the message you're putting out. There are many reasons that you might end up in that situation.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember last year, I think it was last year, there was a conference, which I won't name, but we can, I guess, that, it was in WP Tavern. It was quite a big deal, but it was extraordinary to me to see how prevalent certain attitudes were. It was a PHP conference and basically ended up having, I think, not even one woman in the lineup. So some of the speakers, when they got the lineup, they wrote back saying, look, I can help you. They had some people had 2-3 slots because it's cheaper at conferences sometimes for them to have one speaker cover more than one slot, especially if they're being paid expenses, travel costs and so on. And they went back and said, look, we're gonna help you find someone, and I'm very happy to give my slot up. And basically the conference just said, no, they had every same opportunity. Women could have applied, they didn't. So therefore, not our fault. We're not interested in changing this. And the result was that then the males, the overwhelming majority of the speakers, obviously all male, went, in that case, we just won't come to the conference. And the conference was cancelled. But what was really interesting is I sort of very vaguely engaged in the Twitter conversation, because I don't engage with that kind of, I don't see what good can come of a row on social media. But I was literally just witnessing these people absolutely did not see at all what the issue was, and that maybe they could have handled it differently. And that really made me think, and this was, it was in what would you think you would consider a progressive part of the globe? Do you know what I mean? Not particularly, where you just wouldn't expect it. I'm not saying, again, it's a bias. I am basically saying that we are better than others. that European and more progressive and more inclusive. We're clearly not. So
no.
How do you change that? Excuse me.
We just excluded Dan, by the way.
Yeah, I think.
We realised that there was actually a gender bias in this call, so we've kicked him out. Technical issues, I think. By the way, carry on, guys.
I think, Paul Dan's been having some technical issues, but so I think Dan's absolutely right. Kind of at whatever point you realise that you're putting barriers, and kind of then you have to mitigate them. For example, kind of if you're trying to get more people from the BAME community and they're not applying, then maybe you have to go to where they are. and go, you know, kind of like find out what platforms they're on and say, we really want you to apply. And the same with women. Ask people why, you know, why aren't you applying? Ask them, what are the barriers to stop you from applying in the first place?
Let them know they're welcome.
Let them know they're welcome.
Let them know they're welcome, because
nothing makes people feel more welcome than actually going to where they are rather than sitting there. Like if the people that you want to apply are not applying, then rather than sitting there and saying, oh, you're welcome, but you know, how do they know? Like go to where they are and say, please apply. We're really interested to hear what you have to say. And at any stage, like Dan said, it can be before the application, it can be the application process, it can be after. Wherever you see that there are barriers to people being included, then you mitigate them there, and you keep asking as well. I think that's the really important thing, is you keep asking people, what's stopping you from applying? If they apply and then they drop out, you know, why did you drop out? Did they not have the support? Could they not afford to attend? You know, like I said, visa issues, you know, could we do more to help with, you know, kind of sorting out visas? Anywhere in your process that you're finding that there are barriers, you have to address them there. You can't just sit back. If you really want to change things, you can't just sit back and say, well, we've told them that they're welcome, because if you don't do anything practical to make people know that they're welcome, and to even make it possible, to make it physically possible for them to be included, then you just haven't done enough. And I'm not saying that we do enough. Like I said, for us, we've always said that this is the floor, this is the starting point, this isn't the end. And we want to keep talking to people and sort of saying, what are the barriers? What barriers do we, not because we want to have put barriers in your way, because we don't, but obviously, you know, there are barriers. If we're not getting the, you know, kind of the people applying, then there obviously are barriers. We have to keep asking that question. What can we do to remove these barriers? What are we doing to stop you from being included in our event or our workplace?
I'd love to share this from Nicole. She's part of the agency Trailblazer community. And she said this is a great time to rethink the events approach. I feel more of a blended approach to future events, combining virtual and in-person speakers, could further drive up diversity. I feel blind auditions are tricky, as you need to get a feel for the speaker, which is quite a good point, and maybe you could speak into that, Dan or Diane. What about quotas? Gosh, but that's not ideal either. She's having a conversation with herself here, and then in brackets she said, my son is mixed race and I want him to be able to see more people who look like him everywhere, including on stages. And I can't paste that in because there's not enough characters, I'm afraid, for it. So that's hence I read it out. But it is a good point where she says here, you know, getting a feel for the speaker, etc., when you're going for a more blind audition option.
Yeah, so
well, I guess it comes. Sorry, Dan.
I was going to say, as we were saying earlier, if you don't see yourself, then you're not going to know. If you don't see yourself at these events, then you're not going to know you want to apply. So, you know, kind of that's a really good question. It's that kind of chicken and egg scenario, isn't it? Like we need more speakers from different backgrounds, so more speakers from different backgrounds join. I know me and Dan had a conversation earlier about positive discrimination, and I was saying that I genuinely can see the argument for positive discrimination because lots of people are excluded. For example, I was saying most disabled people of a certain age never went to university because they weren't accessible. So as soon as you put, you know, kind of, so to say if you're disabled, you know, maybe you don't have to have this qualification. Actually, the sensible thing would be to say, you know, if you have skills that mean that you can do the job, then we don't care about the qualification. It's a tricky one because you don't, you know, quotas. I know that there are arguments for and against, But I also know that we are nowhere near. Have we lost Dan? I won't let Dan talk before he disappears again.
Oh,
It's all right, he's
IT
back.
seems to decide I don't need an internet connection right now.
His other screen had frozen, and he looked.
Dan, you make your point, and I'll pick up again after. But I want you to get your point in before you disappear again.
Sorry, I've completely, it's completely gone from me. Sorry.
Sorry.
Keep going, Dan.
I'll keep talking until and then you wave your hands and then I'll stop. I was saying earlier, like things like positive discrimination are a sticking plaster because the system is failing so many people at the moment. What we should really be doing is making sure that everyone has an equal playing field. But having said that, we're not there yet. So I'm not saying that I'm in favor of positive discrimination, but I am saying that I can absolutely see the argument for it, because so many people have the odds so far stacked against them that I can understand why people say maybe we need this. What I would prefer to see is more work done, and it's harder work, but what I would prefer to see is actually people looking at their practices and making sure that they are inclusive, so that everyone does have an even playing field.
Can I make a confession then? Actually, based on this, so Agency Transformation Live, I remember speaking with Peacher, and I wanted to make a massive focus on making sure I had a balance of male and female. And I went so into that we got it. We nearly got a 50-50 male and female. But then when I looked at it, I was like, holy moly, this is a very white conference. So I'd focused on one thing and achieved it, and then realized that actually I've produced a very white conference. And that really bugged me. I was like,
yeah, but
yeah, so
I know, but the thing is that it's if you look at stats and figures, it's for instance, I was looking. I'm about to organize a design summit. So similar situation, and actually I have found figures that the percentage of people of color in the design community is something like 3-4%. And again, it's not because they have less of a desire or less attitude. It's representation. It's hugely important, and that brings me to something that's really burning for me. I mean, the great thing about Lee's conference is that at least, the second one was global, so it was more difficult to notice. But the first time, there were more women on the stage as speakers than women in the audience. So that was amazing. But then the next year, I think there were many more women, because it was just like, oh look, there are so many women, and therefore we are welcome. Because I'm sure Diane, it's so intimidating to whatever you are. I mean, for anybody to enter a room where no one is like you, whoever you are, and if you're a white man, black woman, whatever, it's so intimidating and so hard. But one thing that I really feel quite strongly about, because we're all talking about this from the point of view of people who do see, we do acknowledge that we have for sure we have a bias, and we want to be better, and we are working towards it, and we're striving for it. But what about those people who absolutely do not see it? An example was a blatant, incredible example was the PHP conference, where I was just trying on Twitter just to say, look, are you sure that you mean this? But I was trying to be not confrontational, because I didn't want to stoke a fire. So I just wanted to work out, how do I get them to see that this is not good for them? It's so not good for them that they had to cancel the conference. And even but they still blamed everybody else, and just couldn't see that maybe all they needed to do was just be a bit more open, and it would have been fine. How do we get them to change? Because I don't want to just judge them or fire them down. Not at all. I want the opposite.
I mean, is it worth reaching out to them and saying, I know that you had trouble attracting people from a diverse background to your conference. Can I help you? And put it in those terms. Can I help you improve your your speaker application process so that this doesn't happen to you again? So, instead of sort of saying, it from a negative point of view, kind of open up a dialogue by saying, you know, I think I can really help you avoid this issue in the future.
With the hope that they actually think it is an issue, because that's what seemed to be the case, that just didn't think it was an issue, and that was absolutely normal. So maybe tackle it from the point of view of, oh, you would sell more tickets, something like that, to make them see it. Maybe that it would be
you could sell more tickets, or you could say you might not have to cancel your event next year.
Exactly. That might be, maybe better for you to not cancel. So anyway.
I mean, if they still think that it's not an issue, I'd be surprised. You know, having to cancel an event is quite a big wake up call. And
it was a bit shocking. The whole thing was quite impressive, I have to say. So anyway, I think that if we have to do the work and just see it spread, I guess, and just until it becomes normal, really.
I think that's the thing. I think the key takeaway is that everyone has to play their parts. We have to do the work. You know, that we are the ones, as you were saying, we are the ones with privilege. So we are the ones with a platform. So we have to do the work. You know, it's on us. You know, it's not on the people that we want to include. They've done their bit by they are usually fighting every day of their lives. So they've done their bit. Now it's on us to do our bit.
There's some great messages on TikTok right now. Oh, sorry. I was going to say there's some great messages on TikTok right now saying that we can use our white privilege right now to help, not sit back. Sorry, Dan, carry on, mate.
I was just going to say, if we're creating communities, events, whatever it happens to be that we're involved in, just creating an environment that's is welcoming, respectful, and you ensuring that people are listened to. Active listening is a major part of this. Both from the well-being perspective of the individual, and of course in the taking this forward from an inclusive perspective. It's a really it's certainly one of the biggest focuses for us as a charity is that active listening of the individuals and the community.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I would never just want to shoot someone down. It's even those who don't see it. It's much better to try and speak to them and see whether you can do something to help them move on.
Well, guys, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I kind of feel like this was part one. Would you agree?
Yeah.
There's an iceberg, and we've kind of just knocked a little flake off the top, and I've learned an awful lot, and my brain's kind of imploding. But one of the things that I think I've taken away from this is that we absolutely have a responsibility to use our voice, to use our position and privilege, etc., to be as inclusive as possible. And like you said, Dan, that was really quite moving when you said, people are fighting every single day, and I don't even realize and recognize that people are fighting every single day, and I can't even comprehend or imagine what living like that must be. I'm kind of speechless, to be honest. That was really, really profound. So thank you. And now, Dan.
If we do have any individuals listening right now that are in that situation, then we as a charity, BigOrangeHeart.org, are there to support the remote working community. There are many, many other charities as well that can offer support. So please, we're very happy to signpost to the most relevant charities if need be. So please, BigOrangeHeart.org if you need any support.
Absolutely. It's like you knew where I was going.
I think you guys have done this before.
This is exactly where I was going, folks. Big orange heart. But Dan said it way better than I could possibly have gone. And you can also see from Dan and from Diane's heart that they really do mean what they're talking about. So both of you, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being open. Thank you for exploring these really difficult topics, for throwing ideas out there, and also for encouraging everybody that this is a conversation that we need to keep having with the events that have happened over the last few weeks and months. This is absolutely a conversation that should not stop. and it's an evolving
Absolutely.
conversation. And you've both said it multiple times that this is evolving. We need to keep working this out. We ain't going to get it right straight away. We're going to make mistakes along the way, and let's learn from those mistakes. Folks, again, if you are touched by any of these subjects, if you are one of those people who feels like you're fighting on a daily basis, please do reach out. BigOrangeHeart.org. They can talk with you, they can support you, and again, like Dan said, signpost you as well to the right place if they don't have the resources to help you. If you are watching the replay or in live, please share as well your own ideas and your own thoughts and your own questions, because I think we should have both Dan and Diane back for a continued conversation, because like I said, I really feel like we've just scratched the surface of a really big conversation. It would be great to have you guys back if you'd like. So with that said, I think we should wrap up with how people can get in touch with each and every one of our wonderful guests and Mavericks, and then we shall say goodbye. So shall we start with our guests? Diane, how can people connect with you?
Probably Twitter _ Diane Wallace. Shall I? I'll put it in chat so that you can. It's probably the best way, because I always have Twitter.
You are a prolific Twitterer.
Yeah, and
You're often coming up in my feed.
Is it Dane Wallace or is it Diane?
Oh God!
Look at the speed of that.
That would be good if I spelled
Oh, Dane
it
Wallace.
right.
Oh, let's.
No.
It's-
Don't.
See, I looked all professional first.
There you go, Diane Wallace, folks. And how about you, Mr. Maby?
Pretty much anything / a Big Orange Heart.
Yep.
You've got many places that you can catch us across the charity. I just also wanted to say a very quick thank you to Cloudways as an organisation for enabling us to be able to have this conversation. Really appreciate this opportunity. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
Folks, you can connect with me over on the Agency Trailblazer community, and you'll find that on agencytrailblazer.com or in the Facebook group, which is a big fat link on that website. Peacher, how can people connect with you?
The Design for Geeks Facebook group and the designforgeeks.com website as well.
Excellent. And finally, the handsome Mr. Yancock.
The best place to connect with me is WP Mastery on Facebook. There's a very active Facebook group.
Awesome. All right, folks. Thank you again. We're going to do this again soon. Let's just remind people, BigOrangeHeart.org. If you can support these guys, absolutely worthy cause. Really, really appreciate you very, very much. All right, folks. Shall we end with a little cheesy wave? I think we should. How long can we keep? Hey, Diane's into the cheesy wave. She loves it. And
He's waving in and out the camera.
Oh yeah, no.
Your camera autofocus is like, stop, I don't know where to focus. All right, and 3, 2.